I'm Dr. Sarah Valentine, and this is the Autoimmune Protocol Lecture Series, Week 4, Lecture 7, Living with Eliminations. We've spent a lot of time talking about the scientific rationale for every single elimination on the autoimmune protocol, including those foods that are just really clearly problematic. They have multiple problematic compounds in them. They don't have a lot of nutrition to offer, right? Foods like wheat and soy and peanuts that are very unlikely to ever be successfully reintroduced because they just aren't health-promoting foods. And we've also talked about those foods that have some pros and cons, because those of us with autoimmune disease are more sensitive to an immune system that's going to be easily stimulated, right? We're more sensitive to compounds that could stimulate our immune system. We do have to be a little bit stricter in terms of eliminating food toxins. We just need to be able to live a little bit cleaner in order to provide our immune systems with the resources that it needs to heal and remove any particularly problematic compounds that might be spurring the immune system to attack. So we've talked about those foods that have both pros and cons that we're going to eliminate initially, like eggs and nuts and seeds, but that do have some inherent nutritional value and are excellent foods to play with reintroductions, especially early on in our healing journeys, to find our own individual tolerance to those foods. But I wanted to talk a little bit about living in that elimination phase of the autoimmune protocol. Living in that phase where a fairly lengthy list of foods is eliminated, what that looks like, and especially what that looks like psychologically, because there are certainly some challenges to living on a strict diet. And one of the things that I have tried to do, I've tried to do this in my books, in my writing on my website, and I've definitely tried to do this in this course, is start with focusing on the tremendous wealth of foods that we do eat. Quality meats and seafood, eating snout to tail, eating a tremendous variety of vegetables of all kinds, eating fruit, seasoning our food with fresh herbs, cooking in healthy and flavorful fats, enjoying things like shellfish, coconut, having these foods in our lives and preparing foods in exciting ways that still hit all of those buttons that we want from food, right? We want to feel comforted and satisfied when we consume a meal, and that's okay. It's okay to realize that we are social creatures, that we celebrate with food. We still get to do that on the autoimmune protocol, even if the ingredients that we're using to create those meals is a little bit more, not necessarily limited, but it's certainly different than a lot of the stereotypical ingredients, right? We're going to make a cookie with cassava flour instead of wheat flour, right? We do have to adapt recipes in order to meet this framework. But I want to emphasize that there's a tremendous amount of diversity in terms of the foods that we do eat. And when we think about what we do get to eat and the favorite foods that we have that are perfectly health-promoting, anti-inflammatory foods, just switching that bit of the mindset away from the eliminations. When we focus on eliminations, it's really easy to feel deprived. It's really easy to feel like things aren't fair. When you get so into like, it's not fair that everyone's eating pizza and I can't. But when you switch that around and think about, well, I'm eating this delicious steak and salad and roasted vegetables. There's bacon in my salad, right? We get to start thinking about the amazing flavors we're enjoying instead of what we're missing out on. And that just becomes a really important part of mindset in general when approaching the autoimmune protocol eliminations. So even though eliminations is an important part of this framework, and it's certainly an important part of the healing journey, thinking about it more in terms of the delicious food that we get to eat as opposed to the foods we're missing out on can really make the difference in terms of getting through that elimination phase until we get to start reintroductions. And of course, we're going to talk about reintroductions a lot more in week 6 of this lecture series. The reason why we need to talk about mindset is because healing requires patience. You didn't get sick in a day. This is different than a cold or a flu. Autoimmune disease requires the slow degeneration of immune function, of attack on tissues that eventually builds up to the point where it's symptomatic and eroding quality of life. Most of us can't point to the day that our autoimmune disease symptoms started. We might be able to point to the day we were diagnosed, but for most of us, it's months, years, sometimes decades between when symptoms started to appear and when we were actually sick enough to get a diagnosis. So we're not going to heal in a day either. Hopefully it will be a faster journey for healing, but it's not rapid for everybody. And the amount of time that it takes between adopting autoimmune protocol facets and that template and actually feeling amazing is quite different for different people. So I want to draw the analogy of a bad cut, a bad cut that needs stitches. So you're going to get the stitches. It's going to be bandaged. It'll probably have some kind of ointment that you're putting on it to stop an infection. And you'll probably have the stitches removed after 2 weeks. So that first phase of healing, right, that lets, it's healing enough that that wound's not going to open back up again. That's going to take something like 2 weeks. So that's that initial phase of healing. And when you draw the analogy to healing gut tissues, restoring diversity for the gut microbiota, regulating the immune system, healing tissues that are damaged by autoimmune attacks. That's that initial burst of healing that comes with flooding the body with nutrients, sleeping more, managing stress, avoiding pro-inflammatory stimulus and foods. And some people will notice a big difference in that first couple of weeks. They'll really just feel amazing. I've had people email me to tell me that they got out of their wheelchairs in 3 days. I mean, there are some really amazing inspirational stories about how much people can improve in that short period of time. But that's not the end of the healing. For example, you might still need to keep that cut bandaged for another little while after the stitches are removed to continue to promote healing. It will probably have a scab. Once the scab falls out, you would have a very pink and bumpy scar. Over the next 6 months to 2 years, that scar will fade, become more white, become smoother, and there will always be a scar. So there's this sort of second phase of healing that is much more protracted, and the same holds true for healing from autoimmune disease. We can certainly see big changes over a short period of time, but that's not the whole job. The whole job continues over months and years. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to wait years before you get to start playing with reintroductions and adding new foods to your body. And you should not be waiting years to feel better. You should be seeing improvements in a much shorter period of time than that, at least the first few months. But it is important to understand that healing is something that takes time. There may always be a scar, whether that's something you can see or not. Where that is very relevant would be, for example, autoimmune diseases that attack endocrine organs like the pancreas or like the thyroid or like the adrenal glands. Those organs may never be able to regain full function. They're scarred, right? They're damaged to a point where even though they may regain some function, it may be that the best the autoimmune protocol can do is stop the further degradation of the health of that organ. And that's where taking insulin or thyroid replacement hormone or cortisol for adrenal dysfunction because of autoimmune disease, those things are then required lifelong. You're supporting an organ that can no longer do the job by itself. And that's okay. That is still a success with the autoimmune protocol because you've been able to still regulate the immune system even if there's damage that can't be healed. So when we're talking about patience on the autoimmune protocol, part of that is patience with the entire template. Part of that is patience with your body. Your body is going to take time to heal. And that means approaching even the elimination phase of the autoimmune protocol, knowing that this can be a long haul. You'll probably get to play with reintroductions early. Maybe they won't go well and you'll need to try them again later. That is definitely something we're going to talk more about in week 6. But knowing that you're really trying to not just heal your body now, but you're also trying to maintain that health for the rest of your life. So part of that is being patient with your health, and part of it is approaching this in terms of lifelong health. So approaching this in terms of the long haul. Part of that is playing with reintroductions so you can find something that's really sustainable. And part of that is just the mindset of, this is what my body needs to be healthy, and that's okay. Within this framework, we can find amazing food. We can figure out how to travel. We can figure out how to eat in restaurants. We can have birthday cake. There is all of these things that certainly seem like insurmountable challenges when we're first looking at food lists and foods to eat and foods to avoid. All of those challenges have solutions. So just know that there's a learning curve going into the autoimmune protocol. There's going to be a period of time where you're looking at an ingredients list of a food that you've continued to eat and all of a sudden realize it's not gluten-free, even though you could have sworn it was. Soy sauce is the classic example. But, for example, there may be some ingredients, some food that you just didn't realize was potentially causing problems. You've been eating it all along. You realize 2 months later. Take that with a grain of salt. That's a thing that happens, and you're going to continue to tinker. That's one of the reasons why you're going to continue to tinker and continue to read food labels, is because there's this learning curve. You're also learning about cooking, new cooking techniques. You're finding new recipes. You're figuring out what's going to work for cooking on a weeknight when you get home and you're really tired and you just want food on your plate right away. You're going to figure out how to handle a rushed weekday morning when you slept in and you don't have enough time to make breakfast. You're going to figure out potlucks and hosting parties. All of those things have solutions, but it all requires a little experience, a little experimentation, figuring out how to make the autoimmune protocol fit into your life, and it will. So it's really important to approach this journey knowing that it is a journey. It is exactly that. And there is going to be continued learning along the way, continued refinement, but also continued improvement. When you approach it that way, it's a lot easier to maintain a positive mindset, to maintain hope and optimism. And scientific research actually shows that approaching something like this with hope and optimism can by itself improve outcomes. So hope is really just a way of thinking positively about the future. Optimism is a little bit different. It is a confidence in the successful outcomes of our efforts. Now, studies of cancer patients have shown that a sense of hope actually improves survival. And this goes beyond the placebo effect. So it's not just about believing that this will increase your survival and that somehow leads to an improvement of symptoms. It seems to be mediated through an effect on resilience. So we know that being able to have a positive mindset can actually decrease our stress responses in the face of chronic stressors, and autoimmune disease is definitely a chronic stressor. Optimism is a little bit different in the sense that it doesn't by itself improve outcomes, but it does improve quality of life, even if it doesn't improve survival rates. So when you put these things together, approaching your autoimmune protocol journey with a positive expectation for the future and confidence that what you're doing is going to improve your health, you are actually improving your quality of life. It is going to actually help you feel better to approach it with this attitude, but you're also very likely going to be improving your resilience to stress, which we're going to talk about it more next week for sure, but improving resilience to stress is also going to improve the likelihood of you having that wonderful, successful, miraculously feeling outcome. Now, because so many autoimmune disease sufferers are women, and so many are younger women at that time in our lives where we're trying to balance a lot of competing priorities. We're trying to balance the needs of our children against the needs of our parents, and the needs of our careers against the needs of our spouses, and all of those against each other. At the same time as we're trying to look after our own health, we're just trying to hold it together. And if that resonates with you, you are not alone. It is a very common experience, and men go through this as well, where it feels like everything else has to take priority. And so it can feel very challenging to integrate activities into our life that are going to help promote our healing. That means carving out time for the various lifestyle aspects we're going to talk about next week, like carving out enough time to get enough sleep, or carving out time for resilience activities, right? Those are activities that help us manage stress, like yoga or meditation or a nature walk. It can feel like there just isn't enough time to go to the farmer's market or to go shopping or to cook these good foods. And so because that's a really common experience to feel like we have to go through this to-do list of commitments to other people before we're allowed to do the things that we need to do for ourselves, I just want to really emphasize that it is okay to put yourself first. That putting yourself first is actually not a selfish thing, because as you feel better, as you heal, you are going to have a better ability to meet those other commitments. Your ability to fulfill your responsibilities is hampered by autoimmune disease. So taking the time to really look after yourself is actually a very selfless act, because it's going to improve your ability to be a productive worker, to have the energy to play with your kids, to be able to balance all of those competing priorities. Feeling better and having more energy is ultimately what makes you a more successful and productive member of society. So even though self-care may seem indulgent, it is really critical to our healing. So it is okay to put you and your health journey first. For a lot of people, the biggest challenge for the autoimmune protocol is learning how to be in our own kitchens. I mean, we're so used to fast food and restaurants and takeout and pre-prepared foods in the grocery store. And one of the sad facts of the change in our food supply over the last few decades is that fewer people are really comfortable in a kitchen. So if learning how to cook is part of your healing journey, rest assured that studies show that the number one thing that most people do to improve their health is actually eat at home. That is like the number one, because that cuts out so much junk to just be cooking your own food. You're going to be cooking from whole food ingredients. So try not to think of cooking as a burden. You can think of it as your learning curve, but try to think of it as this new skill that you're learning to look after yourself for the rest of your life. You can think of it as a way that you can take control over the foods that are nourishing your body. When you know what every ingredient is in a given dish, and you can eat it with complete comfort that you are and confidence that you're not going to have a negative reaction, that can be tremendously empowering. It can be wonderful to cook something delicious for our family, for our loved ones. That can provide us with such a sense of accomplishment. So even as you're struggling through that part of the learning curve of learning how to be in your kitchen, learning how to prepare food, it can feel very time-consuming at first. It will get more efficient. It will get easier, and you will find the recipes that you love. You will learn the food, the cooking techniques that create the most amazing foods that you're going to enjoy. So embrace that part of the journey, because you're developing a new skill, and it is a skill that is going to be helpful and promote your health for the rest of your life. One of the best skills that we can develop to make the autoimmune protocol not just manageable, but really increase our success rate when it comes to unexpected challenges is planning ahead. Planning ahead, preparation is really the number one skill that is required for successful implementation of the autoimmune protocol. So this involves a lot of different aspects. For example, stocking your pantry with ingredients for cooking meals that you know are going to be good, right? Buying coconut aminos instead of soy sauce, having some autoimmune protocol friendly, flours around for dredging meat, like cassava flour as opposed to wheat flour, right? Changing those foods in your pantry. Having some portable foods in your pantry, some grab and goes. Having meals prepared in your freezer for when you get home unexpectedly late and you don't have time to cook. You have something that you've previously made in your freezer that you know is delicious and you can just reheat it. Having a repertoire of meals that come together very quickly, or maybe can be prepared directly from frozen ingredients. That can be tremendously helpful in dealing with unexpected situations where all of a sudden you don't have as much time as you thought you did. Finding some recipes for comfort foods and treats can be extremely helpful. So when that sense of deprivation does hit, and sometimes it will, having the food that you know is nurturing maybe your soul more than your body, but it's hitting those buttons of comfort and indulgence. Having a collection of those foods, either store-bought that you can store in your freezer, for example, or that you know that you can whip up quickly, that you can cook, that becomes a really important part of the sustainability of the autoimmune protocol, to be able to continue to engage in these like normal human rites of passage of birthday cake and a cookie during the holidays. Meal planning can be extremely helpful for a lot of people, and that could mean using a service like Real Plans, using any of the autoimmune protocol meal plans in any of my cookbooks. But however you want to do it, it can be just sitting with some favorite recipes, or sitting and writing a shopping list at the beginning of the week and thinking about what you're going to cook each day. But having a sense of what you're going to cook during the week and having those ingredients on hand, that can take away a ton of stress, and it can also ensure that you stay on track. So if you have the ingredients in the house for that great chicken stir fry that you were going to make, then you get home and those ingredients are right there, then it's a lot harder to then dial a number and have something that you are better off not eating delivered to your house. Batch cooking is another strategy that a lot of people use that can be very, very helpful. In my life, I tend to cook extra when I'm cooking, maybe cook another recipe that's going to be a great breakfast food, but I'll cook it during dinner so it's ready for the rest of the week and I don't have to get up as early to cook breakfast in the morning. It might mean cooking a few extra servings to put in your freezer so you have those freezer meals available for a day where you just don't have time to cook. It could mean taking a few hours on a Sunday afternoon and cooking every meal for the whole week. You can use batch cooking in a lot of different ways. You can even do batch preparation, where you just chop vegetables on the weekend so that everything's ready to throw into a pot, and that takes away food prep time even if you're still cooking it each night. There's a lot of ways to use this tool to save you time and help keep you on track. So batch cooking is another great strategy. It's a planning ahead strategy that can really help in terms of implementation of the autoimmune protocol. And really, when it comes to planning ahead, I think one of the most important aspects of this is just thinking about potential challenges before they arise. So if you know you've got a business trip coming up, thinking about what foods you're gonna bring with you on the flight, what you're gonna stock in your hotel room. Do you need a hotel room with a bar fridge? Is there a grocery store close by where you can go out and get foods? Are there restaurants in that city where you're going to be able to order something that's going to meet your dietary needs? Thinking about those problems before you're there, even if you're still going to sometimes be faced with a new situation that you haven't planned for, the more that you plan, the more that you think about these things in advance, and just the more experience you have, the easier it's going to be to solve those problems as they crop up. Another important aspect to talk about just living with eliminations is household support. It is infinitely easier to follow the autoimmune protocol in a household where the other members of the household are supportive, where there are not tempting foods in the pantry that are going to be off plan if you indulge in them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in the house is AIP too. In my house, I follow the autoimmune protocol, but my husband and kids follow a standard paleo diet with actually white rice added. So they're following a paleo plus rice or perfect human diet type diet. That works out just fine in our house. Any treats that might be in the pantry are things that are okay for me to eat. So there's nothing in my house that is sitting there calling my name and saying, Sarah, Sarah, come eat me, that is going to make me feel ill. And it's really easy to compartmentalize meals. So actually, most of our meals are autoimmune protocol with maybe, there might be nuts or seeds or something like that my family's eating, and I can easily avoid them. So they tend to be compartmentalized. separating out the one component of a meal that's not autoimmune protocol friendly is a great tool here for living in a household where there's different diets to accommodate. So talking to your family, making sure that they are supporting you and whatever you need to be supported. So I would say certainly a gluten-free household, because gluten cross-contamination can be a very big deal, especially for people with celiac disease, but for other autoimmune diseases as well. And making sure that the people in your household are supporting you. They're not trying to undermine you. They're not trying to tempt you with foods that are not helpful. If you have people in your life who are doing that, that requires a conversation and potentially some thought about the role that those people are allowed to have in your life. So you definitely want to surround yourself with helpful people. Also, there's this practical aspect, and when the members of your household are on board, they can help you shop for food. They can help you prepare food. They can take a lot of the burden off of your plate for creating these healing meals that are going to help you get better. And they can also share in the lifestyle aspects of the autoimmune protocol. Maybe they'll go for a walk with you. It's a lot easier to go to bed at a good time in the evening if everyone in the household is going to bed at a good time in the evening. So talking with the other members of your household and getting their support is definitely a helpful aspect of successful implementation of the autoimmune protocol. Now, I've talked a little bit about treats and cheats, and sort of, I do want to emphasize in here that you are allowed to have dessert once in a while. That is still an okay thing. You're allowed to celebrate with a special food. Now, a huge part of this is just finding balance and sustainability within the autoimmune protocol, so you can make the best choices as often as possible, because you still get to tackle that feeling of deprivation with some kind of indulgent food. It is infinitely easier to create these indulgent foods after you've done some reintroductions. So for example, once you've added chocolate, for example, back into your diet, or eggs, right, that definitely increases the repertoire of recipes that meet this criteria. And in terms of sugar, you certainly want to make sure that this is an occasional treat and it's not becoming an excuse to continue to make food choices that are not promoting immune regulation. But there are certainly tons of recipes out there for autoimmune protocol friendly treats that are elimination friendly, so that really eliminate all of these problematic compounds. And there are even some great sort of on the go sweet treats that you can purchase pre-made that qualify. So there are definitely options. It is okay to indulge once in a while. So when you start hitting that sense of deprivation, those cravings that are threatening your ability to continue to make good choices within the autoimmune protocol template, that's a time where it's okay to indulge and feed that before it becomes a problem. So I wanted to share some autoimmune protocol staple foods, travel staples. These are portable foods, a couple of sweet treat options, things that you can bring into your life that make the autoimmune protocol a lot easier. So of course, you know, if you are traveling, you can bring foods from home. When I go on a car trip, I have a big cooler and I just cook ahead of time. So it's just foods that I can reheat ahead of time, and that's how I handle that. But there's lots of prepackaged foods that you can bring on airplanes, that you can keep in a hotel room without a mini fridge. There's lots of options. There's quite a few brands of jerky now that are made with autoimmune protocol friendly ingredients. Some are made with just salt, but there are definitely more and more options for jerky. A lot of the Epic products are completely autoimmune protocol friendly, including some of their bars, bites, and snack strips. Canned or pouched fish is a great option, a great way to get more nutrient-dense seafood into our diet. Same with shellfish. Raw vegetables and fresh fruit typically travel really well, are really portable. They don't all need refrigeration, and that hits your fruit and vegetable servings very, very easily. And when fresh fruits and vegetables are, you know, not allowed to cross an international border, for example, freeze-dried or dried fruit and vegetables are great options. There's Vital Proteins Collagen Veggie Blend, which is a product that I worked with them to create, that is 3 servings of vegetables and 1 serving of fruit with 20 grams of collagen protein that just mixes into a glass of water. That's a great travel food. Or great, I'm running out of the house and I need some breakfast food. I've talked about encapsulated organ meat as a great way of getting more organ meat. It's also a great way of getting more organ meat when traveling, when it's maybe a little bit harder to get that serving of liver into us. So I mentioned Vital Proteins has encapsulated liver. Dr. Ron's Ultra Pure has various encapsulated organs and organ meat blends. Epic Bone Broth, Epic has a few different varieties of completely autoimmune protocol-friendly broth. They're in glass jars, they're shelf-stable, so they're very portable, and they're high quality. And then in terms of treats, Paleo Angel's Power Balls are autoimmune protocol-friendly. They're made with coconut and gelatin and sweetened with a little bit of honey. She has only a couple flavors that are not AIP. And Sweet Apricity caramels are completely autoimmune protocol, coconut, milk, and cream, and sugar. Honey is the sugar caramels. So you've got a lot of options in terms of the nutrient-dense seafood, the nutrient-dense organ meat, fruits and vegetables, and even sweet treats. There's so many different options now for the autoimmune protocol to make traveling or just make convenience foods in our day-to-day life easier. I want to talk a little bit about eating in restaurants, especially during this elimination phase. I definitely recommend choosing restaurants with gluten-free menus. They typically know how to handle gluten sensitivity, but definitely call ahead and ask. Farm-to-table restaurants are also good bets. They can often handle dietary restrictions very, very well. But call ahead and ask if that restaurant can accommodate you. It is definitely easier to couch your restrictions as allergies. We don't need to engage in a huge conversation about why we don't eat these things. We just say, I've got some food allergies, here's what I can't eat, can you accommodate me? And let them figure out if they can. Most urban centers, most cities, suburbs will have a lot of different options for restaurants that can do this these days. Classic staple foods that are going to be good bets, plain unseasoned burgers as a lettuce wrap, bacon, avocado, right? There's lots of good toppings, onion that can go on that. And there's more and more burger places, even where I live, there's a couple of different chains that are local food centered and grass-fed beef centered. So there's lots of options now for burger places that can accommodate the autoimmune protocol. But generally grilled meats, check on the seasonings, but if they're not pre-seasoned, often, kitchen can just season with salt if you ask. Salad dressing without the dressing, so usually no crumbled cheese or nightshades or croutons, but there's usually lots of options in restaurants. And you can, bring some high-quality olive oil with you, or ask for olive oil and lemon juice, so you can still get a dressing that's going to be useful or health-promoting in a restaurant, but it just requires asking questions. And plain steamed vegetables, and often actually roasted vegetables, depending on the fat that they're cooked in, are good options in restaurants. So questions to ask, you always want to have, you want to call ahead, but then even once you're in the restaurant, you want to have an open communication with your server. So you want to make sure that grilled meats or pan-seared meats aren't dredged in flour. You want to ask what kind of fats they're using for cooking. You want to ask if they have a dedicated gluten-free space in their kitchen. You want to ask if they know what a nightshade is. I'm always pleased when a server does know what a nightshade is and I don't have to list off all of the foods that I can't eat because of that. And the other question is, can the chef make something special for me? If I give you this list of foods I can't eat, can the chef figure something out? Or do I have to modify what's on menu? And that's, of course, something that you're going to probably know going in if you have researched the restaurant that you're going to well. So even within the elimination phase of the autoimmune protocol, it's absolutely possible to eat in restaurants. It's not, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but it is possible. You do need to take ownership of what you can and cannot eat, and typically have a backup plan in case you arrive and they really can't accommodate you. And the more you do reintroductions and the more you understand what foods you tolerate or don't tolerate, the easier this becomes, because eventually you may be in a place where, as long as it's once in a while in a restaurant, you only need to stay gluten and dairy free, for example. Then you've got a lot more options to play with. So this is something that gets easier and easier and easier as you progress through your healing journey. And there's a great supplement that I want to mention that can be used as a backup for travel, for eating in restaurants, called Glutenza. It actually helps degrade all of the top 8 allergen proteins. So it can help degrade gluten, but also dairy proteins, fish proteins, nut and seed proteins. And I certainly would not recommend going and eating a baguette and trusting Glutenza to degrade all of that gluten so that you don't have a reaction. It is designed for celiacs to be able to eat in restaurants and not worry about cross-contamination. So depending on the protein, Glutenza can degrade upwards of 99% of it in a matter of half an hour to a few hours, depending on the protein. And so it is a great option as a backup to protect against cross-contamination, especially in this elimination phase of the autoimmune protocol. But even going forward, as you know, we often find that those of us with autoimmune disease can never handle adding gluten back into our diets. And when it comes to social gatherings, this can often feel more challenging. It can feel more challenging to talk about foods we can't eat with people we know than with a server or a chef in a restaurant. So you do need to sort of take ownership of it and be assertive. But a lot of the same rules apply, right? Talk to the host or hostess ahead of time. It's okay, again, to couch your food restrictions as allergies. And it's okay, explain what you need, just have that open communication. I personally always like to offer to help, offer to bring something that I know the host or hostess will have a really hard time making in a way that's going to accommodate me. So whether that's some meat for the barbecue or a side dish or a dessert to share, I always try to bring something that I know I'm going to have at least that one thing there that I can eat, but also it's going to take the pressure off of the host or hostess. Incidentally, I also do this with like birthday parties for my kids. I always bring them a birthday party treat and something to eat for lunch, if that's what's being served at the birthday party, so that the host or hostess doesn't have to worry about my kids, and my kids can just go and have fun, and then I know they're eating something that's not going to make them sick. So wherever you can take the burden off the host or hostess is going to typically be very, very appreciated, and it's also going to be easier for you in the long run to know that you're going to get something that you can eat. Another option is always offer to host yourself. So if it's sometimes it's a workplace gathering that's hosted by one coworker, but if you offer to host, everyone's gonna be just as happy to go to your house, and then you have complete control over the food. And you can always just bring something for you to eat. Another option is to eat beforehand, so you're not hungry when you're there, and you can just abstain. Or have an Epic bar or some other snack hidden away in your purse just in case you arrive and there's nothing that you can eat. And then again, Glutenza can be used as a backup. It's probably not sufficient for you to be able to handle, a gluten-fueled feast, but it certainly can handle cross-contamination if you're not sure about what the practices are in the kitchen or whether or not there's other foods that may have crept into what you're being served. So this brings me to my last point in terms of living with eliminations, and that is just communication with others, communication with family members, with friends, with coworkers, with colleagues. And I want to, one of the things that happens when we find dietary and lifestyle interventions for our chronic illnesses that are super successful is we tend to want to share them, and especially when we have other people in our lives who we can see are suffering, we want to share our knowledge with them. And some people are very receptive to that, and this is a major way why the paleo movement has grown so much over the last 10 years is because we share our experiences and other people are inspired, and then they try it and then they feel great, and it becomes this like grassroots word of mouth thing that has grown to millions and millions of people following paleo primal autoimmune protocol in this country now. But not everybody is receptive, not everybody gets it, not everybody wants to get it, and it is absolutely okay to not engage in a conversation with the people around you if you know that conversation is just going to leave you frustrated and defending your dietary choices. So with different people, you might approach this differently. You might just say, I've discovered I have these allergies. You might just say, hey, this works for me, and it's end of discussion. But it's okay. It's okay if the people around you don't get it. It's okay even if you can see that they would benefit from changing how they're eating. It's okay even if they don't get it. Just like a smoker cannot be bullied into quitting smoking, there's no amount of family pressure, please dad, quit smoking, that's going to work. That motivation needs to come from inside. And once a person decides they're going to quit smoking, their success rates jump tremendously. There's a lot of tools for a smoker to use to help them quit smoking and help them get over the addictive nature of cigarettes. The same is true with foods. Food is addictive, and that motivation needs to come from within to make these changes. You have that motivation. That's why you're taking this course. It's okay if the people around you aren't ready for that yet. What you can do is you can lead by example. You can demonstrate as your health improves. They're going to see that. They're going to see how you making some changes have dramatically improved your health. And then when they are ready, you can be a resource for them. You can help point them in the right direction. Your favorite books, your favorite podcasts, maybe this course, if you think this is a good idea for them. But you get to just live by example, be the resource when they're ready. So I want to emphasize, it's okay. You don't have to get into arguments with people. You don't have to rationalize how you eat with people. You know that this is a science-based method of regaining your health. You know that it's working, and that is amazing. And you get to take that forward with you for the rest of your life.